Hey, good afternoon. I'm Chief Russell Rourke with the Sumter Police Department, and we're gathered here this afternoon to update the tragic events that has rocked this community that happened 3 weeks ago with the death of Sharee Bradley and Nevaeh Adams. We will continue to support the family and the community as we go forward. You see a lot of officers to my left. Every one of these officers to my left has been involved in this investigation since August the 5th, whether providing security at the crime scene, providing security at our 2 dumps and landfills that we went through. The investigators, our forensic officers, have worked tirelessly and will continue to work to investigate this senseless crime. I have with me Richard Alt from the National Missing and Exploited Children, Chief Mark Kill from SLED, and our solicitor, Chip Finney, and Attorney Gerald Dees is with us today to represent the family and speak on behalf of the family. What I think is very important for us to do is outline the purpose for us being here today. Number one is we need to go back and revisit August 5th just to put a timeline together and information. We're going to provide information concerning additional charges on Daunte Johnson. And then lastly, we will provide information on what's next. What is our next step in this investigation? So if we go back to August the 5th, Lantana Apartments in Sumter, which is on Carolina Avenue, law enforcement was notified at approximately 6:10 p.m. that a body had been discovered in an apartment. The first responding officer on scene did discover a body that appeared to be wrapped in a rug inside of an apartment, and he set up a crime scene, began to set up a crime scene and notify the other officers. There was an officer that was at the rear of the apartment that was told by a bystander and gave a description of a African-American male in a black shirt and red shorts as an individual that the victim was associated with. They'd had some sort of relationship throughout the years. The officer immediately gave out a BOLO or information to officers in the surrounding area, and the suspect ran from Pula Street across to Susie Rembert, which is in that Lantana area, where he was apprehended along with another gentleman that was very early on was determined that he was not involved in the death of Sharee. Daunte Johnson was apprehended, and after a brief discussion with officers on the scene was taken to this building, the Sumter Police Department, for further investigation. While the officers on the scene, it was determined that Sharee had 3 children, 12-year-old CJ, 5-year-old Neveah, and a 3-year-old named Carter. A search began in the immediate area and gathering information from bystanders relative to the location of the 3 children. Officers with the Sumter Police Department began to canvass the area for the 3 children when CJ was discovered in the area of Lantana Apartments. Now, while all this is going on, investigators and forensic investigators was on the scene gathering information, providing information to the investigators who were interviewing our suspect. Shortly thereafter, Captain Singleton of our patrol divisions on scene meets a relative of Sharee and discovers that Neveah's father lives in the St. Paul Church Road area of Sumter. She didn't have his phone number. She knew where he lived, but knew in the area, but not exactly. So Captain Singleton took her to the residence in St. Paul Church Road and attempted to find, in order to attempt to find Mr. Adams, father of Neveah. At the same time, officers were attempting to identify the location of 3-year-old Carter and the father of Carter. It was later discovered that Carter, in fact, was with his father in the Lower Richland area of Sumter County. While Captain Singleton was en route to St. Paul's Church Road in order to find Mr. Adams, he learned from Mrs. Bradley's relative that the children attend Archway Academy. Officers were dispatched to Archway Academy immediately. He, in fact, himself called Archway Academy, and it was determined that the children had not, in fact, been brought to Archway Academy. After arriving at the residence on St. Paul Church Road, Mr. Adams wasn't there. He shortly shows up. Through the engagement of conversation, it was revealed that Neveah was not with him, and he was not aware of her whereabouts. At the same time, officers on the scene, utilizing K9, used an article search to search the area around using an article from Neveah. Also, a door-to-door canvass to each apartment was conducted. Lantana's going through an area where it's being refurbished, so we also checked through where the buildings that were being upfitted that were vacant for Neveah. While this is going on, Lieutenant Lyons determines information relative to the whereabouts of 3-year-old Carter through South Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles, and it was determined that he, in fact, was safe. We continued a systematic search of the surrounding areas around Lantana apartment using a grid square pattern. Also, trash bins, dumpster, any type of advance in the area was searched. It was during that time that we were in that process that the investigators who were interviewing Mr. Johnson provided us information relative to the method of death that we did not know, and the fact that he, in fact, had killed Sharee Bradley and that he had killed Neveah. After gathering that information, we provided a document to the media. We pushed out nationwide the situation that we had, and that Neveah was missing with a description. We utilized all social media platforms that are available to us and the general public to push out that information. We also contacted the Foothills Search and Rescue Unit from Simpsonville, South Carolina, that has cadaver dogs to assist us in the search. During the process of the interview between the investigators and Mr. Johnson, he advised us that once he killed both Neveah and Mrs. Adams, Neveah and Mrs. Bradley, that he placed Neveah in a dumpster adjacent to the property. Now, the time of death that we believe, or around in the time of death, from the time we were actually notified and began the investigation, is anywhere between 10 and 14 hours after the homicide. Once we were able to glean the information relative to how he disposed of the remains, we made contact with our public works of the city, the county, public works. Sheriff Dennis and his officers assisted us in securing the landfill. Now, based on what we know, is the body was placed in the dumpster. Between the time of the placement in the dumpster and the time we began the investigation, the dumpsters were dumped into a garbage truck and taken to the Sumter County landfill. There, it goes on a concrete floor or a transfer station where all the garbage is laid out on the floor, processed, placed into another truck, and then at some point it's taken to the location on Screaming Eagle Road. Just before midnight, officers from the Sumter Police Department met the cadaver unit, a cadaver team from Simpsonville, halfway between here and Columbia, and brought them to the dumpster. Brought them to the landfill. At the same time, we had already had and established a perimeter in that area whereby the cadaver team searched, along with us, all of the garbage that was strewn across the floor to no avail. We also learned that the amount of garbage that was taken in from the time we believed the homicide was committed, the time we were notified, encompasses around 9 to 10 tractor trailer loads of garbage. We seized those trucks. We held them to that night, and the next day officers from the Sumter Police Department, the Sumter County Sheriff's Office, Richland County Sheriff's Office, went to the landfill on Screaming Eagle Road. We emptied those trucks one at a time in a designated area, and by hand went through all 230 tons of garbage that we believe was encompassed from the landfill from that time. While all that's going on, we made contact with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. You'll hear from them shortly concerning receiving some assistance relative to Neveah. We also spoke with the Richland County Coroner's Office, Deputy Coroner Christine Bell. She too has a cadaver dog, and we followed up with investigations and searches in the area of the Lantana Apartments and nearby roadway construction and other areas. We also searched areas based on information that we gleaned from persons calling in concerning the possible whereabouts of Neveah. So we had several forms of investigations going on. An extensive gathering of forensic evidence on the scene, interviewing the suspect, continuing to search in the landfill, areas around, and continuing to search based on information that's provided to us. Biological information and background was entered into the National Exploiting and Missing Children's database concerning the information that we had, and a team called Team Adam was dispatched to the police department to assist us as we continue. Lieutenant Banghart also entered all of Neveah's information in the National Missing and Unidentified Persons database. Over the course of the next several days, the experts from the Missing and Exploited Children and the Sumter Police Department retraced information from when the dumpster was picked up and through the entire process. And again, Rich will be able to provide us information relative to that. What we believe is that there's a possibility that 2 other trucks were also loaded with garbage from the area. We believe that it's in a cell or in the area on Screaming Eagle Road. We will be providing or developing a course of action over the next several days. During the investigation, during dealing with the National Missing and Exploited Children, we've also been in extensive contact with our partners at the state and local level. We have been in a development process relative to how we will deploy from this point forward to continue to search for the remains of Nevaeh Adams. I've been in constant contact with Chief Keel over the last 2 weeks, last 15 days really. They've been very helpful in pushing this case forward in the lab. As I met with you all the first day, we talked about that we have a lot of forensic information. We have a lot of evidence. Because of the evidence that we gathered, based on the statement that Mr. Johnson provided us, and again, based on the evidence we gathered, and based on the analysis and the analyzation and the results of our evidence, we today charged Mr. Johnson with the murder of Sharee Bradley and Nevaeh Adams. 2 counts of possession of a weapon during a violent crime, and also possession of a stolen vehicle that was stolen from Missouri that belonged to a victim that we believe was involved in a homicide in Missouri. All of the information that we've gathered, all the information that we've been able to illustrate today is based on the information we gathered at the scene, based on the evidence, based on the statement of the suspect, based on the information we've been provided from our partners at the State Law Enforcement Division. And again, as a result of that, we charged Mr. Johnson with Neveah's murder that took place on August the 5th. Now, our local legislative delegation has advised us the governor's office will fully support us continuing the search for the remains of Neveah. I will say this: if we receive additional information as we go along, we'll continue to investigate any information we're provided. I'm going to ask Mr. Rich Alt to come forward from the National Exploited and Missing Children to explain and identify their role in this matter.
Good afternoon. My name is Rich Alt. I'm with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And at the behest of the host agency, Sumter PD, they requested that we send a team here, a team Adam people who respond to active cases. And that was my lead job. The first 2 things, or the primary 2 things that the Sumter PD asked of us was, 1, to help to continue to push out the flyers, not only the paper flyers, but electronically, to all of the people that NCMEC, the National Center, communicates with on a daily basis. So it goes on our website, it goes out through all the social media. It also goes to a host of companies that have teamed with NCMEC, that all of their drivers get an electronic copy of what we're looking for. So that is all pushed out. So we did that right away. The second thing that was requested was some subject matter expertise on landfill searches. With that, I called in 2 people, one from Detroit, Michigan, and one from Texas, to come in who have done a number of landfill searches to crunch the numbers and figure out how we do that. They're much better at it than I am. They came in, they go back, they do a complete search from the point of the dumpster, checking with the Department of Public Works in Sumter City, going to the transfer station. Then they went to the landfill site on Screaming Eagle Road, and both of those organizations that operate those facilities were very cooperative with law enforcement and with the National Center. And so they go through all of the documents. We kind of narrow down where the best odds are to figure out where all of that trash may have gone to. We have it marked down to a specific geographic area, and then we ask the landfill people to stop working in that area, and then we go back and we complete a complete documentation of everything that's done, why it's done, how it's done, so that we can explain the entire process to the prosecutor's office, to law enforcement, and we provide a summary of the costs, the manpower, the time, the geographic area, how deep you would have to dig down into it, and we present that all to the host agency, in this case, of course, Sumter PD.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Finney.
Good afternoon. My name is Chip Finney. I'm the solicitor for the 3rd Judicial Circuit. I am here today to publicly thank Chief Rourke and his staff for the hard work that they've done. I have always been amazed at how our law enforcement officers spare no time or energy in getting cases solved and bringing them to our office. And this is a perfect example of a tragedy that could have been much worse, except that they were hardworking, got on top of the leads, found the suspect, and were able to get a statement. We also want to thank the National Center, Missing and Exploited Children. They are great partners to have in a case like this. Thankfully, we have never had a case like this during my administration where we've had to go and look for a child in a landfill. We have the right technical people helping us, and we are going to work hard to find Neveah and get her back with her family so that they can have some closure, and then we can process the case in court. Mr. Johnson has been charged. He has an attorney. The process of the court process will start very shortly, and we will keep you updated on all aspects as the case moves forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gerald Dees. I'm a local attorney here in Sumter. I represent specific family members of Sharee Bradley and Nevaeh Adams. I want to first thank Chief Rourke and all of his officers and the individuals within his employ that worked tirelessly and diligently on this case. I want to thank them on behalf of the family. I also want to thank Sheriff Dennis and any role his office played in helping to bring justice for this family with regards to this tragedy that they've experienced. This is, as a person that's born and raised in Sumter, this has touched me personally, has touched our community on a level that you can only, that you can't, I'm sure, imagine. And this family is going through some difficult times right now as they have had a meeting earlier today in my office where they were informed about the murder charge that's now been levied against Mr. Daunte Johnson. This family wants nothing more than this gentleman to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And I have confidence in our law enforcement agency and in the prosecutor's office led by Solicitor Finney that that's exactly what will happen. And the family has that confidence as well. But I ask you to understand their pain. They have lost a daughter, a sister. They've lost a child, a grandchild in Neveah. When I say lost, I mean as it stands today, Neveah, based on evidence, is presumed to be dead. But she is not, her body has not been recovered, she has not been found. So this family still holds on to hope. They hold on to hope that perhaps Neveah will be returned to them. And that's the hope they will continue to hold on to. And I'm sure for any of us who have loved ones such as they do can understand why they continue to hold on to that hope. I ask our community leaders from the governor's office to our local legislation to continue to work towards bringing justice for this family and searching and recovering Neveah for this family. I ask our community leaders to continue to stand behind this family and support them and lift them up in prayer. I ask our pastoral leaders, again, to do the same, to rally around this family, galvanize around this family as a community, and continue to support them through their prayers. This is a family that, as I said, they're still processing this information. They're still processing this entire situation. They are in pain, and they are hurting. This community at large is hurting. This is a tragedy on so many levels. But once the investigation continues and as this situation continues to evolve and as answers come to this family, hopefully they will have some closure, because that's what they seek more so than anything is some closure. Again, I want to thank Chief Rourke and the diligent work on the part of his office. I thank Sheriff Dennis and any role his office has played, and I thank Solicitor Finney for the work to come when it comes to prosecuting this gentleman to the full extent of the law, which, as I said earlier, we have the utmost confidence in. Thank you.
Questions?
Chief, do we know the method or the tools that were used during the murder based on what the suspect has confessed to?
Well, based on the confession, but also based on the forensic information and from the autopsy, we know that Sharee was stabbed multiple times and died as a result of that. We were also believe that's the same method based off the information from the suspect, how Neveah perished.
And as far as searching in the landfill, is there physical evidence that ties Neveah to the landfill or to the dumpsters, or is this solely off of the confession there?
Based on what we know and based on the forensic information that we have, that is the most likelihood place for her to be because of the fact that we searched the dumpsters, we searched the transfer station, and through other forensic information that we've received.
Chief or solicitor, I know that you probably could speak to this as well. What's been the demeanor of Johnson through this process?
Investigators have spoken with him several times. He has a lawyer now, so my office is not in touch with him. We are waiting the case file from the chief's office so that we can begin the process of preparing the case.
What does the process look like now? You said search. I know you said there were 2 additional trucks that you all were looking at.
So we will have a meeting tomorrow, discuss the logistics of going back to the landfill. The process of the landfill is not what many may think. Once the garbage is placed into the cell and covered, it's airtight, it's compacted. There's a crush rate on the amount of lift, which is the amount of garbage that's put in there every day. So we will be relying on our experts. There's many things we have to take in consideration, both for the proper recovery and the safety of those doing the recovery. So we will begin that process tomorrow.
Have you all recovered a murder weapon, or was that stashed somewhere? Did Johnson use that?
We're not going to get into that level of specificity of the case.
So we spoke with a couple of her loved ones, Sharee Bradley, and they expressed some sort of frustration that not enough was being done during this search process. Have you been in contact with any of the family members, and will they be able to go along with you to the search process of landfills, or how do you plan to do that?
Well, shortly after this tragic event, we met with both families. In fact, we met at one point in Mr. D's office with the family. Because the number of persons involved in the family, at their request, we've provided all of our information through Mr. D's. Concerning a search, that will be a law enforcement function that will be required to do in a law enforcement fashion and maintain the integrity of any evidence that we receive. Once we begin that process, we'll first advise Mr. D so he can advise the persons in the family, and of course we'll provide you all the information as well.
I think it would be, let's just say why a missing persons report was appropriate in this case versus an Amber Alert or anything of that sort.
Well, we did have a discussion about an Amber Alert. We did look at the information that we had before us based on a 3-hour lapse of doing everything we could to address locating Neveah. The Sumter Police Department, along with the State Law Enforcement Division, did collaborate with the information we had. And based on the information we had at the time, it did not qualify for an Amber Alert. So out of an abundance of caution, we provided the information to the media with a photo of Neveah and as much information as we possibly could. We've received nationwide attention. We've gotten calls from Chicago, California, Tennessee. This has been at the forefront, as it should be, not only in this community, but nationally for the last 3 weeks.
Chief, do we know a motive yet?
I cannot speak to that.
Have you been in contact with her other siblings? Will you be offering any sort of assistance programs or anything like that of that sort, as they're probably going through a lot of trauma right now?
Oh, absolutely. Our victims advocates will be reaching out, and again, we will convey that through Mr. Dees. There is resources available to them relative to the trauma that they themselves are experiencing.
Chief, is there any way that we could speak to to what evidence at the scene specifically allows you to believe that she is deceased at this time, or is it kind of paired with the confession there?
Again, based on the forensic evidence we gathered, based on the forensic evidence that was analyzed by the State Law Enforcement Division, provides us in an articulable way, based on the information provided by the suspect, that in fact what he led us to believe and told us from the beginning that he did, we can prove based on the evidence gathered. Going beyond to levels of specificity of what type of evidence that is, I can't do that in this juncture.
Now, do we believe that this case ended with Daunte Johnson, like, taken in custody? Do we think, or do we think there's more people out there involved in this case? Should the family be worried for their safety, or do we think this is a done deal? This is done.
Well, it's not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination as far as our investigation. We'll continue to follow any and all leads. We're going to continue to place a strategy in place to identify and find the remains of Neveah, discover those. We have no reason to believe that any other family member is in danger. We have no reason to believe that there's any co-conspirators involved with Mr. Johnson that we're not aware of. Thank you all. Thank you. Meet y'all back there.